loyalty aspect, it really came up for me because, okay, for example, back in June, I cleared my whole team out. I fired everybody. Because I used to think it's about, okay, I need to hustle my way. Let me go and speak on this stage. Let me go. As somebody, I was so popular, Jerry, but I was broke. The more popular I was, the broker I was. People would be like, people don't do that in business. So you gave up money. You did this. I remember a month we fired 3 clients. The next month we got 4. This company turns 5, December 19. One of the things that I've come to learn or understand about this journey as a woman, as a wife, is I could never tell this story without talking about my husband. So for my husband to say, it's okay, keep running. I will run this household, right? I will take care of the bills, whatever needs to be done, just focus. Right? I'm grateful for the fact that when God was looking for who to do something like Charles Ado, he looked around the billions of people and dropped it for me to do that. When I was at my career at EY, I'm very ambitious. First day, I walked into that office. I walked in, I was like, one day I'm gonna be a partner. After a year and a half in Jerry, for the rest of my 5, almost 6 years there, I cried every morning. No jokes, before I went to work. Every morning I cried. This is a long journey. You're not trying to do it, I want to blow now. You're building something. So to think that there is a shortcut, right, where heaven will breathe on you doing nothing and then boom, you have to come here with your dreams. God is a God of process, because in that process is building your character. So stop fighting the process. If it requires you putting your head down and everybody overlooks you for 2 years, 3 years, that's cool. I think, to be honest, the only thing I would do differently.
Hi, Stephanie.
Hi.
And we're just going to jump right in.
Sure.
So, if someone gives you 30 seconds
Okay.
to tell them about yourself, who would you say you are?
Okay, awesome. Of course, I start with my name. So, hi, my name is Stephanie, and professionally, I'm a chartered accountant, and I also run an outsourced accounting firm. And the focus of that really is just to make sure that as a business owner, you have peace of mind, right, around your numbers. Apart from that, I'm also a family woman. I'm married. I have 3 kids. I live in Abuja. I actually moved back to Nigeria in 2017 after living in England for 12 years. And I really came back because I was pursuing destiny. I was pursuing my God-given destiny. So you can also get a sense of the fact that faith is a big part of my life as well. So that's what I will tell you about me, really. This work and this family life. And we can dig into more about that.
That's a lot to unpack.
Yes.
You're doing an interesting one. Like you said, you moved back to the UK
From
after staying there for like 12 years.
Yes.
I just want to go deeper into that. People usually don't do reverse
I
Japa.
reverse. Yes, I
So why did you Japa in reverse?
So I always like to, whenever I have to share a bit about my journey so far, I'm always keen on letting people understand that this wasn't part of some elaborate plan, right? This wasn't something that maybe I'll say, oh, I always knew that at this point in time I'm going to do this or I'm going to do this. I literally just would take a step at a time, as I was trying to figure out my life as I knew it. Then, so why did I guess, Japa in reverse, to answer that. So first of all, I left Nigeria at the age of 14, 15. And that was after I'd finished junior secondary school. And so what that did was I more or less grew up in England to a certain degree, even though my parents lived in Nigeria. So I went to school, went to finish secondary school, went to university, and then started working. And by the 11-year mark, I would say, I actually met my husband.
Oh,
right? Yes. So I met him in 27, actually, yeah, my 12-year mark, actually, 2017. I came for a wedding in Nigeria. He was a groomsman, I was the bridesmaid, and the rest they say is history. So with that, it became a next natural step for me to move back. Now people say, oh, so you moved back because you were getting married. Yes, but it was also the perfect excuse because I worked in one of the big 4 in England, and it was going to be a hard sell telling my parents that I wanted to move back for the sake of moving back. So getting married was a good excuse, like, I'm coming back, you know? So that was how I then, jackered in reverse. But it wasn't because I had some great plan of what I wanted to do in Nigeria. But for a long time, I would say I did know that I never felt like I was to settle in the UK, even though I lived there 12 years. I always knew that the things that God would have me do in whatever form, family, work, whatever it is, a big part of that was going to be in Nigeria. I don't know how I knew, I just knew that I knew that. So it just made sense for me to come back, and that's how I came back, really.
Amazing. I just want to ask more about your stay in UK because
Sure.
I did a little of research, like you had mentioned.
Yeah.
And you worked in the Big Four. I checked and I said it was Ernst and Young.
Ernst and Young, yes.
And you were like an auditor.
Yes,
already. That you were having like a clear path to
yes, exactly.
to like. So how was it like when you told your parents like, I'm coming back because of love?
So, well, the conversation didn't really go like that.
Okay.
Because, so a few things that I guess you'd say had happened. So I met my husband January 2017. Actually, I had left Ernst & Young December 2016. So I kind of moved into the entrepreneurial life. I was testing that out a little bit. And what I mean by that is, so when I left Ernst & Young, I actually thought I'm never going back into anything concerning audit, accounting, like I was done. I wanted to try something else. I thought I would go into doing more of consulting. In fact, I had already started like a life coaching and business coaching diploma. Like I wanted to shift gears entirely. And so when that happened, it was more like I was now going through a process of finding myself. But I had already left the Big Four, and I still had one more of my accounting exams to complete. So I just told my parents, like, I'm just trying to figure my own thing out. We'll get to that bridge when we cross it. So when it then came to, I came back for Christmas 2016, met my husband January 2017. I then, my parents knew that I had met someone. So even though nobody thought so far, like how far would it go? But they were like, okay, you've met someone. It's the first time we're even having any marriage related conversation. My parents weren't really that way inclined. Everyone was just like, focus on your work, So we never discussed marriage or them encouraging me to get married early or anything like that. But by the time it was clear, by March, I had told my dad, like, are you ready for a wedding? Because it looks like this is my last bus stop. And he was like, what do you mean? I was like, okay, we'll try this again. It's not the reaction I expected. So fast forward to by the time October, my introduction happened in the same year. So I think that everything just kind of fell into place. So it wasn't really a case of having, I guess, to convince them, but it was now a no-brainer that, okay, she's going to come back because this person is not moving, and they were like, well, okay, cool. So maybe you come back and then you get a real job or something. But it was really one of those go with the flow moments. I didn't really need to have a conversation with them about, okay, I'm coming back for love per se. It's just kind of, okay, they met the person. He's got a good head on his shoulders. Well, she's charting her course, and if it means she's coming back, then she's coming back. I guess it would have been different if there wasn't even anything and I'm just like, I just want to come back. Then maybe you would have had to have a conversation with them about, okay, why are you coming back? But with this, it was kind of like, okay, well, yeah, your husband-to-be is here, so I guess you're going to come back. So that was how it went to do.
Okay, now looking at your entrepreneurial course, right? You said you were trying to move into consulting and business coaching, even trying to do a diploma. But I had read an interview with that same interview, you said that you never see yourself as an entrepreneurial person.
Yeah.
Because it was not an option that was.
It wasn't, exactly. So I'm using language that I have now. Back then, I didn't even jump in thinking, okay, now I want to be an entrepreneur, right? It was more like, I know I have some confidence in my skills. I know I'll figure stuff out. So I'm just going to start this. But I always saw it like an extension of me being a service professional, right? It's now that I guess you can say my self-esteem or confidence has allowed me to use the word more now that I have some mileage, right? Because like I said, it wasn't. I didn't. My parents weren't entrepreneurs. They're very corporate people. So that was always like the path that was charted for me, or that was like the expected thing. So when I left the big four, it wasn't even something that I went, okay, I'm doing this because now I want to be an entrepreneur. It was more like I don't want to do this.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm just going to be trying other things till I figure out what I want to do.
Okay.
Pretty much, yeah. So that's kind of how it was.
Okay, so and then you now started Next Coach.
Yes.
Yeah, tell
my
us
original baby.
tell us about that.
So the real OGs who are gonna watch this know about What Next Coach. In fact, it's so funny. So my makeup artist, we met when I was still in my What Next Coach era. So she was like, I didn't even know you're running this firm. It's only What Next Coach I knew this whole time, right? So What Next Coach was actually that's what I then started. So the idea with What Next Coach was that I was going to I wanted to focus on helping small businesses. And that actually was born out of the fact that when I was in the big four, my clientele were always the bigger guys, right? So my clients were in like the maritime sector, real estate, hospitality, energy. So I was used to the bigger guys, right? Listed companies and whatnot. But I was looking for something that felt a bit more fulfilling for me. So I was like, well, I have this skill. So why don't I use that to actually help this other audience, right? Help this other group of people as well. And that's what I was looking out for. So What Next Coach, funny enough, didn't even start off with the business element. What Next Coach actually started off with me coaching my fellow millennials who were also big four or investment bank level, but we're going through what we used to call our quarter life crisis, which is you left university, you went into these big companies and a graduate program, and maybe you've not finished exams or whatever the first few years, and everybody's head is up. It's like, okay, well, I've known that these exams, school, like, what do I do with my life now? So that was actually the people I started working with. They weren't business owners, they were people who were trying to figure out, I don't know if I love my career.
Why not get the name? What's next?
Well, exactly. So it was a question. It was actually What Next Coach, right? It was What Next, coach. Yeah. So that was actually the first audience. But then, as time went on, it started to evolve. And when I moved to Nigeria, I was like, yeah, this is not gonna work the same way. And so I had to adapt to the market and then start doing more of the business guys.
Okay.
So with the transition from What Next Food to Charles Ado, it's interesting. Charles Ado is a whole separate company, right? It's not What Next Food rebranded, because for another 3 years, I ran them concurrently.
Oh, wow.
Yes, for another 3 years, I ran them.
2019 to...
So What Next Coach was on from 2017. Yes. And then I set up Charles Ado 2019 of December 2019. And it was in 2022 that I was like, I don't know why I'm trying to run two companies. They have overlapping responsibilities and
images.
Exactly. So I was like, let's just collapse, because it's still centered around me anyway in that sense. So with Charles Ado, I remember as I'd given birth to my first child, July 2019. So just a few months before when I decided to register Charles Ado in December 2019. And a lot of what was in my mind was, I felt like I had outgrown the name What Next Coach. I felt like it was capping me. I felt like it was affecting my confidence in certain circles. People didn't mind, but I think it was more of me. And I just felt like, I want to show up a different way. And I think this isn't letting me do it the way that I want to. So I didn't even think of setting up Charles Ado as an accounting firm either. What I actually wanted to do with it was to go the route of the financial consulting, but I wasn't even sure what I wanted that to look like, right? I just felt like I still have my accounting background, I still have my auditing background. I want to use that some way, but not necessarily as an accountant, even with what we're doing now. So that wasn't part of the plan at all. What I'm doing now was never, ever in my mind.
How did you now get to this place?
So, okay. So, by the time it was 2020 and then COVID kicked off, that was actually turning point for Charles Agile. Before then, friends who knew me, I was helping out with pitch decks, projections, just on a small level. And I remember during COVID, we were then at home. And so I just had this like idea, which when I look in hindsight, I really believe was the leading of the Holy Spirit to just do videos. Like just do videos talking about different things. Yeah, like cash flow, just random stuff. Exactly. Like just random, right? In 2020. Because we're home. I remember I won't forget, we have a similar setup. Now we're doing this video, but then in our home, my husband helped me set up. We rearranged the parlor. We used our phones, but he took it as seriously as I did. All I just knew was like, let's put it out and see what comes back, right? So I put out the first few videos. I ran ads with them, and then I got our first ever CFO consulting gig, right? Now that CFO consulting gig it wasn't even something I was putting out. I didn't even consider that I could offer fractional CFO services. But they reached out like, oh, let's have a conversation. We're a startup and we need someone to help with our financial side of stuff. So I'm like, okay, cool. I mean, I put out a video. I was hoping it would yield a conversation. So I did that. And we got talking, and from one thing leading to another, he then is telling me, okay, actually, so it kind of felt like I was in an interview, but didn't realize I was actually being interviewed for this position, So we got talking, and they were like, basically, would you be interested in being the chief financial officer? We're trying to raise money, etc. You seem to have the skill set from just what we watched. Would you be interested? Now, obviously, I'm not looking for a 9 to 5. So it could only be on a consulting fractional basis, which they were fine with. And I remember getting off that call thinking, I just completely winged that. I'm not even sure what I'm going to do. Like, I know what to do, but when there's what you've always known, how you've known it, but then now you actually have to, you're like, oh, okay, cool. So we started doing that. I started working with them. So I'm their first ever CFO. Funny enough, now this year in October, they've actually come back as clients for this what we currently do in Charles Addo, because the relationship has been there. But so that transition happened. Now, when I started working with them, they had a young lady that was supporting them as their accountant, just junior, just doing the books and all of that. And so she would report to me, and I would also guide her. And we formed a bond very quickly. She just had this thing. I always joke and say she's the Ruth to my Naomi. Like, just us working together in a very short time. One day she just says to me, listen, whatever you want, wherever you're gonna go, whatever you're gonna do or want to do, I just want to be part of, she's saying this. I'm not even sure what I'm doing, right? She just says this. Maybe she didn't realize it was prophetic. She just said it. And then, so we're working together. Another day she goes to me, this accounting thing. So she's already saying us. She's not my staff at this point. She's the accountant. So I'm like, what do you mean? She's like, yeah, like a lot of businesses need help with their accounting and they don't need us to be there full time or anything like that. So why don't we like explore that? My first thought was absolutely not, because who's going to be doing the accounting? Like, who's going to be doing the bookkeeping? That's way below my pay grade at this point in my career, mate. Like, I'm not doing that. She was like, oh, I'll do it. I was like, okay, cool. That's fine. I'll go see if I can find us a few clients, right? So from there, I actually eventually absorbed her into my company as my staff. And till today, she's actually now our manager. And she's the reason that our business model evolved into this, because if it was up to me, that was not my plan. It was not on my agenda whatsoever. But she said it, and she was like, "Yeah, I'll do it with you. Like, let's try it."
Can you give her honorary mention?
Yeah, she is. Her name is Favor. Now she's even gotten married in this period. So she used to be Favor Alami, but now she's Favor Johnson. So she's been a solid right hand. I wouldn't. Yeah, I don't think I would have been able to do as much with Charles Addo if I didn't have someone who had that level of loyalty. So I don't take it for granted.
Speaking about the people of Charles Addo,
Yes.
like, I see you are a very people focused company. I see
Yeah.
company culture.
Yeah.
Is this something that you set out to do? Like when you see, because most places when people work there, it's toxic, and all that. And even looking at how you relate to your staff around.
Or even just around, like in our place of work. Yes, I prefer to be approachable.
So is this something that you set out to do, like when you were starting a company, you were just like, yeah,
Yeah.
I don't have a company that is more.
More like that. So yes, 100%, because that's also how I operate as a person. I don't have too many relationships because I take each one very seriously. And that includes the people who then work for me. And by virtue, I have they're in a position where I get to speak into their lives to some degree. So anybody who I have to lead in some capacity, both even in my domestic arrangements, so my domestic staff, my staff at work, my husband's staff that I get to interface with, it's very important to me that everybody is good. Right now, I've had to evolve in my leadership to know that that doesn't always mean that I'm going to be nice, but I will always endeavor to be kind, but I will be firm, right? Especially because at the end of the day, the point of having a team or people following you is there's goals at hand. And I have to balance that with the goals of whatever's the setting. So if it's the company, etc., versus the goals of their own personal, that under my remit. Because whether I like it or not, if I'm leading people, they're gonna have other things that are going on with them that could affect what they do. So I prefer to be approachable. I always tell my team that if you ever make me start acting like a Nigerian boss, I will fire you. I've only ever worked in England, right, in terms of employment. So first name basis is a norm, but it was never an avenue for disrespect. Obviously, we're in a different cultural setting. So, I mean, people still call me Ma and whatnot. But if you call me Steph, like, I generally don't even have a problem with it. But it cannot now be something you're using as an avenue for just general disrespect. Not even about age or anything, just general behavior. So, but I know that when I always thought of the kind of employer that I would be, because I also know that when I was building Charles Ador, the goal is for it to be wider than just an accounting firm. It's a full scope professional service firm. We just started with what is our strongest skill, right? And then we build on that. So there's plans to add HR, there's plans to add, we do a little bit of recruitment, though it's focused on accountants. So we're starting small, but the vision is bigger. So I always knew that I'm going to have employees and I'm going to need everybody to be on the same page for whatever duration they work here, to be on that same path for what we need to accomplish. But I also have to, in my leadership, give them the room to do that. Because I'm one of those people that I really can do a lot of things. A lot. A lot of things. Yes, like I'm one of those people before. I'm like, if you want something done, you do it yourself. If you want something done well, you do it. But you can't build anything of substance with that mindset. You're always going to need people. It just doesn't work, right? So I always knew that my leadership and how I treat people and how it was always something that was at the top of my mind. So yeah, I would say I always wanted that environment. I can't even work in anything other than that. So if you check with some of my staff, I've apologized to some of my staff. If I feel like maybe I was a bit harsh with them and it's now to the point that it's affecting our working environment, I'll pull you out, we'll have a conversation. I'm not too proud to do that because we have a goal. So if you're feeling like it's too toxic or something has gone on or maybe there's unspoken stuff that just causes unnecessary tension, just douse it.
Obviously, now I see that you guys have a couple of clients.
Mm-hmm.
So how was the early days? Because selling financial services,
Selling services in general.
services in general in
Yeah.
Nigeria, it's very hard.
Yeah.
Like people usually look at it as if, what, I can do this thing by myself.
Exactly.
I can have an in-house accountant. Why do I
Correct.
need to job?
Correct.
So I want to know what is the story like for the early days of getting clients. Obviously, you said you had come in, somebody had asked you to come in and CFO, but like you said,
that was one of yes.
Yeah, so like coming, I just want to know
how we've gotten to this point. Absolutely. So yeah. Selling, and I think talking about this in this mini documentary we're doing now was actually one of the things that I was looking forward to the most, because I really want For those who would watch this and are running any type of service business and they're still in that phase where it feels like I have no clue what I'm doing. Like they're feeling like I don't know what this is. I don't know if this will work. I don't know if there's a future for this. I really hope that they will take something out of what I'm about to share. So when we first started, remember, I mean, I've shared a bit about we kind of fell into it, right? And so in the beginning, the feeling or the thought was everybody needs accounting. So that should be a no-brainer. It's like saying, it's like trying to sell water, but you know that everybody drinks water. But you also know that with water, there's some people that will never buy bottled water. There's some people that will only buy pure water.
Yes.
There's some people that if it's not Voss water in a glass, they're not touching it. There's some people that they will pick Lasena over Seaway or whatever. Like, but it's all water. And so in the beginning, I was so it's like my mind was I was constantly trying to figure out the gap between what I want to give the market versus what the market is saying. And I think that that's where the struggle is because you're in business and to a certain degree, the market will always determine what they will say what they want. You now have to know that the game is to give them what they want in order to give them what you know they need. And if you're service oriented, you know that this work is to some degree a work of love. So you're going to have to stoop to conquer most times. So in the beginning, apart from this client that I mentioned, and I'm happy to say that it's John Oamen. I call him my big brother, John of Cutstruck. So when he sees this, he'll know he got his shout out. So he was the first in that for the CFO side of stuff. Now for the accounting side, there were two. In fact, there was one lady in particular that I would say she was now the real catalyst, right? Or two, let me say two of them. Two of them. They're not our clients anymore, but they were for a long time. The first one was I was invited to do some kind of a workshop, accounting workshop for a small group of ladies who were in manufacturing. And so off the back of that, this first lady, her name is Oshione. She used to run a brand called Juice Lady. They were quite known because they had clients like Farm City and all these are Pappies, and also they used to do more like B2B, and so they used to sell these juices. And we met. This workshop was in the middle of COVID as well, I think. So we met online. It was a virtual workshop, and so she reached out afterwards that she would like to work with us. Now at that point, I couldn't believe our luck because I'm like, okay, so in that moment, I had to even go and think back to, apart from running the workshop, what did I say that made this a sale happen? Because I was also trying to learn how best to sell our services. So I had to keep figuring out the best language to use. First of all, I quickly realized that telling somebody you do accounting did not register for most people, by the way. Because most people, for what people are used to in Nigeria, they actually think of audits, like when you need to fight tax man. That's what they think. So they're like, oh, I don't need that. Oh, I have somebody, So I had to quickly learn that the terminology, don't bother, just go straight to explaining that. So she was the first, and she was with us for about almost 2 years, but then she relocated and she packed up the business. So that's actually why she's not even a client anymore. The second was actually someone who we met. We talked about What Next Coach. I used to have this coaching community, like a membership community. And one of the ladies, she's like a mom to me. Her name is Madam Ajoke. She runs a HSF Wellness. It's like a spa and gym in Lagos, in Ikoyi. So she used to be my client actually under What Next Coach. So did a lot of structure, and I used like a lot of my courses, things like that back then. She was one of the regulars. So I remember when we're starting this off and I started saying, oh, I'm doing this as well. So she's like, Steph, if you're doing this, do it for us now. So that was another, right? So it was a weird thing because, again, like I always share, I really didn't have a blueprint. In fact, that was my biggest, if I want to say I didn't have a gripe with God, but you get what I mean? Like, I'm like, you're setting me down this path. Where is the blueprint? Like, can I see somebody who is doing this path? None. He was just like, yeah, you're the blueprint. So you're not going to find that. Just don't bother. It's me and you together. Right. So that was it. And then another thing with services as well is when you now get the first opportunities, you need to go all out because after that, word of mouth should spread like wildfire. Because also, if you think about how Nigeria is structured, as much as you can say, okay, I'll go to maybe Chamber of Commerce to look for a network of business owners, I'll look for the only thing that really, really works, especially in Nigeria, you run all the ads you want to run. But the thing that ads are supposed to do is really that they've heard of you from someone they already know, like, and trust. So your ad is just
solidifying
that. So at some point, I stopped spending money on ads because it was not really yielding anything. It was more, oh, this person told me about you. You're doing this for them. Okay, let's talk. Because they've already seen someone that has trusted you and is happy with what you're doing. Another thing as well that I had to understand was we were on the receiving end of a lot of PTSD, post-traumatic stress disorder, of Nigerian business owners. We came into the space when, I think it was coming down from, it was a time when we had a whole influx of like coaches and all of that. And then a lot of people were disappointed. Yes. Pre-COVID, yeah, just before. So like that 2017, by 2020, it was like starting to die off a little bit. Only those who had maybe proven themselves to be the real deal were still there. So we now had the fallout of, another one that will say they can do. It doesn't matter that it wasn't coaching that I was talking about in that sense, but we had to deal with that because people, a lot of the complaints I would get was, but I've paid so much for this before and I didn't get the value. I didn't get the value. And I'm just like, okay, maybe just give us one more try. So that also had its own knock-on effect. So for a while, we weren't really making anything decent, by the way. Like we really weren't making anything decent. Until, okay, by the time we now had like maybe 3 clients, 4 clients, it was me, then Favor, then we now made our first hire. Like I say that our clients, if I believe that all our clients are sent to us by God and we're supposed to be conduits of his love for them, that in this journey of business that is a headache for them, we come in and offer some semblance of it will be okay. We're here with you, right? So it's really that starting point. And it was just one thing leading to another. I would go to events, I would talk to people. I kept learning how to recraft what I say we do, It wasn't enough to just say, oh yeah, I'm an accountant. So yeah, it's like, oh, okay, cool. That's the reaction. But once you start saying, oh yeah, we're like an expert management accounting firm. So how, do you have an in-house accountant? Oh no, I don't. Oh, what do you run? Oh, so how do you do this? How do you do this? How do you do this? By the time they've said no, it's like, oh, that's what we do. They're like, oh, that's the service you offer. So you can give me my monthly report. You can do our bookkeeping. So I found that it wasn't about the English we spoke. It was being able to initiate conversations that allowed people to talk about their issues around accounting. And we now say, oh yeah, we can do this using their language. In fact, with one of our tagline now, or one of the things that when we describe what we do at Charles Adder, is that we're offering peace of mind and financial clarity. It was actually one of our clients when I said to her, so if you were to describe what we do or what our service, the effect or impact it has on you as the business owner, she was like, oh, it just gives me peace of mind. And that's how we infuse that into our marketing language. So there's a whole lot of mental gymnastics that goes on because you have what the market needs, but the market is looking at you and it's not translating. Only you, as the business owner, is able to solve that problem. I see most people get frustrated that people just don't want the service. I'm like, yeah, you're going to have to do a little bit more work because that's just your business. You have to be able to educate them to the point that they understand this is what you do. Otherwise, your clients will look at you and walk right past you and go to another person who might not even give them the extent of what you're able to, So those first few clients, honestly, it was an uphill climb. I would say that it wasn't until we're in 2024 now, right? This is probably our best year.
Wow.
This is our best year.
Now, in the middle of that, in the middle of all this, give birth.
Yeah, 3 times. Yes.
How has it been like? How would you describe it? Because number one, having a company that is like a baby at the baby stage, they now add a physical baby.
Yeah.
How was that like?
It's funny. My firstborn and this company are the same age. Yes, 5 years. She turned 5 in July. This company turns 5 December 19. One of the things that I've come to learn or understand about this journey as a woman, as a wife, is I could never tell this story without talking about my husband's support, right? Because I was having this conversation actually with my dad recently, and you know, I was basically saying to him that I'm just grateful for the privilege to have been able to go to push at Charles Adder for this long, to the point that now it's starting to yield more tangible results. And my dad was like, yeah, is it really a privilege? It's more of an opportunity. I'm like, there is a privilege angle because there are many people that opportunity knocks on their door, but they don't have the privilege to pursue it. And what do I mean by privilege? For my husband to say, it's okay, keep running. I will run this household, right? I will take care of the bills, whatever needs to be done, just focus. It's a privilege to have someone do that, because it's easy to look at it and say, oh, it's a man, it's his responsibility, but it has its real burdens, whether we like it or not. Yeah, men may be wired to be the providers, but it doesn't mean that there's a saying, just because I carry it well doesn't mean it's not heavy. So to have him watch me fumble my way through the dark, trying to figure this thing out, and not be like, okay, when are you gonna go get a job? Because this thing gets heavy at times, and all of that is a real privilege. And it's not because there was an unlimited resource. I think as well, to some degree, it's not like we weren't yielding results, but it's not as if my husband was also not seen. Like, maybe if we, like, for 4 years you had no clients, that's a different thing. That would have been crazy. But he's seen it, and it's just like, and because my husband is an entrepreneur, like, he's full on entrepreneur at heart, so he understands that things take time. So I think for me, like, having that was was a big factor, first of all. So being married to my husband was the beginning of pursuing destiny in the best way that I could. Now, with the kids in the middle of it, I already had my first when I started this. By the time it was time to have the second and the third, I knew that because that was coming, I also had the responsibility to figure out how to have structure in the business so it doesn't stop without me. So I've had 2 maternity leaves since running Charles Adder, and it didn't shut down either time. We still were serving clients, right? But even the mindset to go for it, there was a freedom and an ease I had to really stop and figure the whole thing out as I was moving, as I was going along. So the support system, I don't think I would have been able to even have the time or the space to think about what to put in place to have the right structure to allow me the time I need. Because each time, I think, so with my second came as an emergency, right? So she came 3 weeks earlier, and it was an emergency C-section. And because of that, by the time my mom was, my parents don't live in Abuja. I live in Abuja. So by the time my mom could come, so there was a lot. So I had to take, whether I liked it or not, I'm always trying to form superwoman. When I was like 6 weeks, I'm going to be back out. I did 3 months out of the game. But because there was already some structure, at this, I still have Favor. So Favor was running it, at least our clients were still getting served. We had already done another hire, so work could go on, right? But I didn't plan to take 3 months. So having someone like Favor, having the staff that I had then, having the support of my husband gave me the chance to say, okay. But apart from that, is also just knowing in this life, whatever will be, will be. Because at that point, I was fighting for my life. So like, I was like, whatever happens, this is even a good chance to test the small structure I've put in place. So I think that the children and running the company, a lot of these things have to do with support systems, and also the part of having, in different seasons, by the grace of God, good enough domestic help. Because for us as women, if maybe your help leaves or something, that's it too. You're going to have to run it yourself. You become everything. So the support from mainly my husband, I mean, of course, God helps and sets a lot of things in motion so that in those seasons, you have the backup you need. And then also just knowing that it was my responsibility to do all I could to have some structure, because I knew that it's not going to be a good look if, because I'm away, we can't serve our clients anymore. I have to think about that. Now, maybe for a guy, you may not think about that because you don't have to go through pregnancy and that postpartum in that sense. But I knew it was coming. So I had to really think twice. But I would say that in order to have come this far, even to this point, I mean, my last kid is 1. He just turned 1 in September. All of this is still down to support because everybody's home is different. There's no right or wrong. But if maybe my husband had different views on certain things, I may have to play ball in that sense as well. It is what it is, right? Is you form your everybody's own home is different. Really, that's really it. And just having the responsibility and knowing that I have to do as much as I can to put in the right structure in place. So first of all, I think off the camera, there was a conversation we were having and you said, the CEO. And I said to you, no, God is the CEO of this company. Me, I'm just managing director, managing principal. And I've come a long way in the different aspect. When I say different aspects of spirituality. So one thing that I found in my own journey is as I was growing in my relationship with God, I realized that there were some parts that were easier for me to completely and totally leave in God's hands. And some parts I used to treat God like, oh, it's okay. Like, you didn't go to Harvard, you didn't go to Big Four, you don't know anything about business, you know? So it took me a while to understand that there wasn't any secular versus sacred divide. My whole life is my whole life, business, children, marriage, friendship, whatever. And if I'm trusting God with one part, why do I leave him out of others, right? And I would say that even a turning point for Charles Harder was when I actually decided that I'm not going to try to grow this thing on my own. I would say that I had a bit of an Apostle Paul thing. So Apostle Paul is very smart. If you're a Christian, you read the Bible. Anyone who knows, he's a very smart guy. And there's something that happens with very smart people. Our confidence can be in our smartness, right? And God is the one that put the smartness anyway. Nobody creates themselves. But there's a tendency to make that the idol. So for a long time, I believed that what I'm seeing is my effort. Like if I didn't do it, it wasn't going to happen, right? Now, it's not entirely untrue in the sense that even if God gives me an instruction to do something, I have to play my part, otherwise it won't happen anyway. But in the beginning, it was more like I would push and push and push and push, and it was all my effort. And then I would get so angry that why didn't God bless my effort? Whereas I didn't check in with him about whether this is the path or what not to go. So for me now and where I'm at, and having come to the 5th year mark, and I've seen how much of it really wasn't me. It's easy to look at it and be like, yeah, Steph is, I don't know, charismatic. As one of my clients says, you have a Harvard voice. You know, it's easy to think it's those things, or it's easy to think that you have this. But I've realized that also when we look around, there are people that are smarter than me. There are people that have more privileges than me, but they haven't even gotten the same results. So you know that it's not about those things alone. There is always a God factor. And that's because none of us decided we were supposed to come in here. He's the one who orchestrated all of that. Like we are created for his own delight. So he's the one who already knew us, pre-knew us, predestined us, knew that we were going to do all these things. And so in the pursuit of purpose, in the pursuit of destiny, in the pursuit of what is my life actually about, I could only go back to the source. And that now has to feed into everything I do, not just home life or when it's time to pick a husband or what I should name my children. It also had to do with this. And I think that was the biggest block for me because it's now that in church, we're having more conversations around us in the marketplace, right? It was always within the church, right? So I could have my giftings and I would be feeling bad that I'm not using it to speak on the pulpit. Whereas that's not where I'm meant to be anyway. Like occasionally can I come and say something, but I'm not meant to be a pastor in that sense. So I started to also work with God and he started to help me understand like this business or anything you're doing as a believer is your ministry, right? We're all ministers. We're all ministers of reconciliation on a basis. That's what the Bible says. So now is in your own sphere of influence, what does that look like? you will not always find a blueprint. So you still have to go back to the person that will tell you that voice, go this way, go that way, do this, right? And the spirituality angle comes in when you also get to the end of your rope. You've now done everything like you know to do. And you just realize, like, if I was supposed to have moved from here to there with all this effort, I'm still actually here. Something is all right. So Charles Addo actually pushed me to press into God in a different way that isn't necessarily maybe some of what feels dramatic in that sense. It's really just became a lifestyle. So I trust God even in the little things. Like, for example, this video, this videography we're doing now. It wasn't my idea. I didn't, most people will see this and think, oh, this is very much the kind of thing Steph would go for. But it wasn't my idea. I was literally asking God, how do you want us to celebrate this 5th anniversary? I feel like it is a milestone. It is a milestone of its own kind. How do you want us to mark it? And he was like, do a mini documentary. He was like, no problem. Just do it. I said, okay, cool. Who's going to do it? Because the way you are saying this thing is not my typical put my iPhone and videoing myself. Who's going to do it? And he goes, oh, reach out to Jerry. And I'm like, Jerry that I met at Zoho conference? I was like, okay. But what's he now saying? Because when we met at Zoho, right? At the end of it, Jerry's like, oh, I'd like to take a picture of you and your team. You guys can come into the studio. I'm like, oh, cool, thanks. How much? He's like, oh, no, for free. So I'm there telling God, like, you want this guy to think that I want to abuse the goodwill he gave us? That maybe he'll be thinking that, because I said, let me do pictures for free, you want to add video, that kind of stuff. He was like, just talk to Jerry. I even remember when I said, okay, I feel like this interview too it's supposed to have a bit of depth. I don't know who would come up with questions. He was like, just mention all this to Jerry and Jerry would take. So that's how I literally came to Jerry. Literally. And I said, well, this is in your hands.
Jerry's here.
And Jerry's here behind the camera. Like even meeting at Zoho and all of that. So when the Bible says that the steps of the righteous are ordered by the Lord, sometimes it may seem like an abstract thing, but it's really steps one by one. And so even there's an idea that I wanted to do for our gift boxes this year. And when I ran the budget, I told God, I said, from whence cometh thou this money? And the way he has moved stuff around, it's insane. So there's sometimes that's why, like, there's some places I wouldn't really be able to go and speak completely because they might say, oh, come and tell us your 5 steps to XYZ. I'm like, I have 1 step and that's God, and I'm not being funny. I remember when you see like, what's this lady that is big in oil and gas, Florensha Alakija, whenever she talks about God, people say, Madam, tell us the 5 steps now. Which one is God? But I'm like, now I get it. Because even if I tell you, these are the steps I took, you'll be like, okay. But then I can't even tell you go and do it because they were my steps for what I meant to do. So it cannot be generic. But if I package it and give you, all that will happen is you try it, it won't work. And I'll say, oh, well, that's what worked for me. And I can show you worked for me. And we are not each other's source. We didn't design this thing we're in. So the spirituality aspect, it really came up for me because, okay, for example, back in June, I cleared my whole team out. I fired everybody. I cleared out. It was just me and Favor left. It was just me and Favor. What happened? The team we had then, they were just messing up quite a bit, and they were taking a few things for granted, and it was almost causing reputational damage for us with some of our clients. And I was complaining to God that your staff are stressing my life. And he goes, can you trust me for something? I'm like, always. What's up? He's like, let all of them go. I say, who's going to do the core grinding work? He was just like, if you would just have faith, I will. And then funny enough, the lady who is our current operations coordinator, her name is Faith. So she came at that time as well. So it was like a sign, like God was like, I said, you should have faith. I've sent you faith. Relax. So I cleared everybody out. And then that's when one of the things that I really believe in many years to come will be one of the biggest legacies of Charles Addo is our future accounting leaders internship valley, we call it for sure. Because the instruction was clear these people out. get fresh new guys. So instead of looking for experienced hires who are not very malleable, who don't want to understand what we're trying to build here, go for the ones that are coming out of university, finishing NYC, that are still green, but are sponges and are willing to learn. Like because in leadership, you're replicating aspects of yourself to a certain degree. So there's a certain work ethic I have, and not very many Nigerians have it. So if I capture you in that early stage of your career, you are now like the entire workforce is being impacted by that because there's more people that excellence is the baseline, right? So we did that, and I said, this is gonna be hard. You're asking me to train people afresh. You're asking me to go green. This is a lot. I wasn't even thinking about oh, if I train them, they will go. This company, by the way, is meant to be a revolving door. If I train you at some point, you will go. In fact, I should be able to now place you in top companies. You know, the time you say, oh, this person is XEY, XPWC, X whatever. That's like the goal. So this is a revolving door. So I don't mind you leaving, right? It's not a problem. But it's give these people an opportunity too, because depending on backgrounds, there are very many smart people that end up counting themselves out of certain parts because, oh, people like me, maybe it doesn't open. So I'm opening that up, right? So that was the instruction. And I was like, God, this is gonna be hard. Like, how am I teaching these green guys? I need I've just find my team. I need them to be able to catch. It was like, trust me, one of the best decisions ever. And we just hired our third cohort. So now we're a team of 12 in total. The ones that the first batch, they're about to become the ones that are left from the first batch are actually going to now be confirmed in January, full-time positions. So and that's kind of like the system that my career started. So in Ernst & Young, I came in as an intern, then I went to the graduate program before. So it's a similar model, you know. So just following that was an instruction. Now, somebody can see that and think, oh, that was very clever. It wasn't my idea. I'm never going to take God's glory. It was all His. So the spirituality angle is, I also don't want to get to the end and I meet Jesus and it's just like, this is your entire rap sheet that I had for you. But you only did this because you couldn't trust me to just, the whole picture. And so I don't know. At this point, that's now my life. Like, even down to who we hire, clients we take. I fired some clients. I've had to, because certain things are revealed. Now, the question is, I've learned not to wait to see the physical manifestation to believe. If he says there's something off, then there's something off. I don't need to wait and find out because it's not worth the hassle. Yeah, it's not worth the hassle. And I'm in the financial world. Any small thing, I feel enter jail. There's no ignorance. One wrong number can cause problems. A lot of that is this. So I'm always in a weird position that there are things that I would do. People will be like, people don't do that in business. So you gave up money. You did this. I remember a month we fired 3 clients. The next month we got 4. Even I had to ask God that these clients are saying I should fire. Shebi will just keep where they could have still be paying the money. He said, are they your source or I'm your source? Right? So I can't do Charles Ado with it because it's not even my company. First of all, it's not my company. It's not my company. And that means even tomorrow, if he says Charles Ado has to end, I also have to obey that because it's not my company. All I have to do is just be guiding me to do what you want me to do for the people you want to impact. And it's bigger. This business is my ministry. I'm a believer. I follow Christ. I'm very much in touch with what would he like to do. How would, when we say the Lord's Prayer, thy kingdom come, thy will be done on earth. How do you think that happens? It's in heaven, it's established, but he needs conduits, hands, feet, human beings, brains, but you are not allowed to stay at the same level around me. That's the only time I have problems with people. Like, why are you not growing? I'm giving you everything as much as is possible. Why are you not growing? Because again, even from perspective of like God, like even though all my staff are not, I have Muslims, I have Christians, but it's still a form of discipleship that I have to deal with them, even if it's not always in the religious side. And that's because God cares about all of us. It's easy to lose sight of it. These employees, these clients, but they're all humans at the end of the day. And humans are very important to God. We're the whole reason, this whole ecosystem exists because of the love he has for us as people. And that's why he's willing to be long suffering. He's willing to take a lot of crap from us until the final end, you know. So I think it's just a part of my life at this point. It's my lifestyle. I try my best not to make a move. There's some things, you know, the weights that so easily beset us. There's some things I'm just like, I don't need God's input on this. And then he's like, you sure? I'm like, sorry. So yeah, so that's really it's a big part of how we've gotten here. And it's a big part of how we're gonna go to whatever is the next level, you know. So
Because that's what I'm actually going to right now.
yes.
The way you spoke about this aspect of business,
Yeah.
it means you are very passionate about it.
Oh, I am.
So, just as we're wrapping this up, I
Yes.
would love to know, you've been around for 5 years.
Mm-hmm.
You've done a lot of, I guess, as a business owner, you've made mistakes.
Mm-hmm.
You've made mistakes. You,
It's part of the game.
you fallen, you've risen. But you are here.
Mm-hmm.
You know, but looking back, like, is there anything you would do differently? Clients, hires, decisions. Is there anything you would do differently?
I think, to be honest, the only thing I would do differently is probably just have started trusting God earlier with the journey. This part of what I'm saying really only became the norm towards the end of 2022. So I did this 3 years on my own strength. Right. The reason why, yes, have I made wrong hires? Have I done? But you see, some things, it's easy to look at all the things that didn't go wrong as mistakes. But I don't even consider, like, I will make those mistakes again because of where they've catapulted me to. You know, there's some things that if you don't make those mistakes, you won't learn the other side of it, right? So, for example, the way we hire now is not how I hired in the beginning. It's a lot more rigorous. It's a lot more, I'm clearer what I'm looking for, because at the beginning, I was trying to just fumble my way through the dark. And now there's a bit more clarity, right? But for me, it's at the beginning, there were instructions that the Holy Spirit was giving me. Or maybe call it maybe where I was also in my work. I wasn't really trusting it. Not that I wasn't trusting God. I wasn't even trusting whether it was me or like what voice that was, if you want to. You know, when people say, well, how do I know it was the voice of God? You know, so you're like, nah. Or if something comes and I'm like, no, that's too simple. It can't be that. So I must go for the complex, you know, way. I've repented or retired more of making things unnecessarily complex, because my brain is wired like that. I work better with on jumbling things. If it's too simple, I might be like, eh. But I've outgrown that a little bit. But in the beginning, there were just a lot of, I don't want to even call it mistakes. It just led to more delays. It's more like God is saying, try this. And I'm like, no, that's not what the people who went to business school would suggest. That's not what the marketplace makes. You know, like that kind of thing. And I just would do stuff in my own strength for so long. And I was just like going around the circle. And I'm like, why is it not working? Why am I not getting the clients? Why? Even what we're doing now at Charles Addo, my husband had already actually spoken about this when I was still doing What Next Coach. He always used to tell me, you know what you're doing What Next Coach is going to evolve. You're still going to have to go back to the number side, right? But maybe we always teases me that if you had listened to me earlier, maybe by now, Charles, that'll be 7 years. You know? So I think it's really just not trust. By the grace of God, I don't think we've made any monumental mistakes, right? In that sense, like, I don't think we've made anything that I'm like, oh, if we did it like this, it wouldn't. No, everything that has happened has continued to work for the good of this company, right? It has. I'm not going to say, oh, did we have, even when I say bad hires, it's not even that it was, oh, bad hires. It's more like I was not equipped in my stage of leadership or entrepreneurship to know the right things to look out for. And I would say that one of my biggest lessons of being an entrepreneur is you must be ruthless about holding yourself accountable, because it's easy to blame everybody. Oh, after you finish blaming everybody, you still be at square one, Abby. So it's better you learn what you need to learn so that you continue to make better decisions. I did what I could with what I knew. That's not a mistake. That's just what I like. When I was a child, I reasoned like a child, and now that I'm an adult, I reason like an adult. So I can't say what I did as a child was a mistake. It's what children would do. So it's really just, I would really say the biggest mistake is not trusting God earlier, because there's some things that maybe we have moved faster. Maybe another mistake, if I want to call it a mistake, is there were times though that I did think that Charles Adolph's progress would be based on other people. What I mean by that is, this kind of thing that you meet somebody and you just say, this person is the one that is going to, and God is just looking at you like, oh, here we go, another idol. And then the person just, you anchor your whole hope on that person. They might not even have promised you anything, or some may have promised, and then it just doesn't click. And then you now spend 1 month being depressed. 1 month that you would have used the same emotional energy to come up with better things, right? And then you go into that. So that thing of thinking, oh, woe is me, I'm so little, I'm so new, only if I have somebody that will speak for me, those kinds of things. And it just doesn't work out. And then off the people one as well, is there's also that temptation, and maybe for some more than others, but I would say my personality before I matured to this point was very much to kind of move with the louder side of stuff. So what I mean by that is, it's easy to think that maybe being loud, or we're in an era now that it's about, you see business owners forgetting that they're business owners, they're not content creators. You left your job, gotta be dancing what I'm doing. Now, for some people, that's a strategy. I'm not even knocking it. But it's having to stop and say, the whole world is running like this. Why? Does that apply to me? Right? Because I used to think it's about, okay, I need to hustle my way. Let me go and speak on this stage. Let me go. As somebody, I was so popular, Jerry, but I was broke. The more popular I was, the broker I was. Because you get known for something, but then you're not even confident enough to know where to charge or what to charge for. So it really was that thing of saying, I'm going to buckle down. This is a long journey. You're not trying to do it, I want to blow now. You're building something. No matter how small a house you want to build it still is brick by brick. Foundation first, then you do the walls, then you do the windows. So to think that there is a shortcut, right, where heaven will breathe on you doing nothing, and then boom, you have the company of your dreams. A waste of time. So I quickly understood that God is a God of process, because in that process is building your character. So stop fighting the process. If it requires you putting your head down and everybody overlooks you for 2 years, 3 years, that's cool. Because when you come out, you have something of substance to say. That's it. But a lot of times we think it's by the things we're saying and how we present and what I'm wearing and how it's like, those things have their times for counting, but they're not the things that build what you're trying to build. Unless you're not trying to build anything of substance, then fine. But if you are, you have to understand that it takes, your character too needs to grow. The clients that I have now, Jerry, that if they were my clients in the first year, I would have fumbled this so bad. Maybe I'm not the kind of person to get starstruck, but I would have maybe overextended myself because I couldn't believe that this was my client. Now I'm just like, welcome, take a seat. I treat everybody with honor, but I'm not overexcited about it. I can focus on what needs to be done. And one of the revelations I had about this was, Joseph in the Bible, who spent 13 years or 17 years in prison. And the day he comes out, he does something very interesting. First of all, Joseph didn't allow prison to change who he thought he was. So he comes out and it's like, oh, finally, you've been interpreting dreams, oh. Even the people you interpreted for, they forgot you everything. But one day, the king needed somebody to interpret a dream, and then you were remembered because your good work has spoken for you, even though it felt like nobody was noticing, right? Then the day you come out, he didn't go, oh my God, the king wants to hear from me. He was like, cool. But before I go to this game, I just got back and look cool, because he understood that first impressions took out. If he came before the king looking like the prisoner, the king will take what he needs from you, but you've affirmed to the king that you are actually a prisoner. Which means he may send you back to the prison, because that's how you presented yourself. So your gift You have a responsibility to walk with God to the degree that He helps you understand the gift, so that you have sense about the container to put it in. Because in this life, there are people who see what you carry, but they will make sure or capitalize on, I've seen that this person doesn't really know. So they'll even be downplaying it, but getting the most of it from you because of how you present it. But Joseph said, oh, the king wants to see me. Okay, cool, just give me a few minutes. I need to go shave, dress nice. And from there, you do what the king needed, and it meant your promotion. A lot of times that happens to people because you can't believe your luck. As a believer, you better believe your luck. That's just the truth of the matter. I don't know how other people run it, but I have to believe my luck. So if you bring me in, when I've been diligent, have I not been diligent? He says, if show me, seest thou a man diligent in his work, he will stand before king. So it should not surprise me when I stand before someone that I should consider a king and not a man, because I've been diligent. But if I don't have that knowledge, I will go and think, I'll not be saying, oh, this world is so wicked. The king took what he wanted from me and then sent me back. Me, did I signal to the king that I know who I am? The game is the game. The principles are the principles, but we like to act like, So I would say, so those are just some of the mistakes. And for me, I guess I'm not, by the grace of God, like I said, I don't think we've done anything monumentally, like a thing I'll say, oh my God, we shouldn't have, right? Everything has brought us to this point. We're better for it. And we've had incredible favor that even when we make mistakes with clients, they forgive us, right? Thankfully, nothing crazy has happened, but for the things that could have caused busy, it didn't, So so that's how I would say from the mistake side.
So this is 2017.
Yes.
Yeah. In your company's career.
Mm-hmm.
And if you were to give yourself the 2016 2017 Stephanie,
yeah,
when you left Ernst & Young,
yeah,
you will look back at and tell us on the role you now.
Interesting. Oh, there's a lot I would tell her, but I think the one thing I would tell her is not to, how do I phrase it? I need to phrase it properly. So the one thing I'll tell her is that her stubbornness and going the other direction paid off. So she shouldn't allow anybody take her off course. And that's just because at that time, I think by the grace of God, my stubbornness has paid off, but I did have a lot of the voices that I cared about almost take me off course because they cared, right? I'm a parent, so I can understand certain things. I can understand me wanting my children to have a sense of security based on a job, right? But I think that even though I wasn't as mature in my spiritual journey with God as I was then, I just knew that the norm wasn't going to work for me. So I would just tell her, like, don't let anybody take you off course. The few times they took you off, quickly run back, right? Quickly run back. So yeah, I'd say it works out. That stubbornness counts for something. It counts. My score. And that's the thing, it wasn't even score. That's the funny thing. But to parents and guardians and wards, it might just be like, this baby, I just be defiant. Why don't you want to? But I just knew that it didn't make sense. When I was at my career at EY, I'm very ambitious. So the first day I walked into that office, the address is number 1 More London Place in London, right there, close to London Bridge. And true to form, I walked in, I was like, one day I'm going to be partner. I went in with my suit, everything. That was the ambition. But a year and a half in, I was like, I don't want to do this. But because of my ethics and my own personal whatever, like, I still did what I was meant to do. But after a year and a half in, Jerry, for the rest of my almost 6 years there, I cried every morning. No jokes, before I went to work. Every morning I cried. I would ask God, this is a lot. I'm tired mentally. I don't want to, I'm not sure if this is what I want to do. But then the funny thing was, God would say, okay, so what do you want to do? And I said, I don't know. He was like, you're going to have to stay here and say no. So I did. Because I didn't know. Because it's easy to say, this thing is just shoe is paining me. I want to change the shoe. Now, some shoes you can change shoes, they're easier and whatnot, but it was just that realization for me that you get to a certain point and God expects you to partner with Him in the sense of you start to have a bit more revelation about who you're meant to be, and you start keying into that. After a while, you don't just get told what to do. Even the instructions we talk about that we get from the Holy Spirit is more like, I should be able to know if I get an instruction, I should be able to know that that's not in line with what God has told me about where I'm going, right? So it can't always be you're just sitting down and waiting to be told. Sometimes you have to just be like, I don't know how I know, but I know this is it and I know this is not it, right? So it's really, the scoring part of it was more, you're going against what society expects of you in that sense, or you're not taking the traditional path that everyone should want to take. So even coming back to Nigeria, the expectation would have been, my parents, like my parents-in-law, they have their own connections. So a job in most places is not supposed to be hard to get. But when you're like, I don't want CBN, I don't want them, and they're looking at you like, but this is what other people would jump at. And I'm like, I'm not other people. It was a lot because at certain points, when Charles Ado is not working, you're like, maybe these people are not right. Maybe they're right, or rather, maybe they're right, and I'm the one that is wrong. But inside, something was like, if you do this, you may have some money, but you'll be completely way off. Completely way off. And now that I'm a mom, there's another generation. It's easy to think that your decisions affect only you. That me being way off might not even be me. I may survive it. But if my kids were supposed to see a certain thing and don't get to see that or see it, like I mentioned, I didn't see entrepreneurs growing up. My parents were corporate people. I didn't see that, right? So by all indications, it was hard for me to even see myself at that. The reason I can even see myself more as an entrepreneur is because of my marriage, actually, because my husband is, and he has affirmed a lot of those things. Before, if you ask me for an entrepreneur, even as up to last year, I'd be like, no, I'm just a service professional. I just run a service firm. Like, see, it's not a business I'm doing, So yeah, that's it. That's how I would say for now.
So finally, data show most of the people in the industry.
Yeah. Praise the Lord Jesus. We are fine.
And you are fast.
Yes.
Wise.
Glory to God.
Question. What are you most grateful for? What are you looking towards for the next time?
Yeah.
I knew you were going to say
No. Even with the trust not going, you know what you're trusting God for. Yeah.
Where is Charles next Friday?
Gotcha. Yeah. What I'm most grateful for, honestly, and I mentioned, I alluded to it a bit, is I'm grateful for the opportunity and the privilege. First of all, actually, let me even say it this way. I'm grateful for the fact that when God was looking for who to do something like Charles Ado, He looked around the billions of people and dropped it for me to do, right? And then I'm also grateful that as He dropped it, there was the opportunity and the privilege to go through the process of even figuring it out, right, with Him. Like I said, because the privilege part is, I believe that many people get opportunities. Even in my life, I'll feel like there are other opportunities that I'd gotten in somewhere, but maybe didn't have the privilege to pursue it. Even right now, actually, there are other opportunities that have nothing to do with Charles Ado, but either the season I'm in or other factors is just not allowing me to pursue it. But with this, it's one thing to have a vision, and it's another thing to see that vision through. It's a great privilege because different things could happen. All sorts of attacks can come your way to slow you down, make sure it doesn't happen. Like even this year that it feels like we had a bit of a quantum leap. The beginning of the year, I noticed that one of the things that kept happening in my home was like what I call domestic unsettlement. The helps just weren't staying. The Holy Spirit was like, this isn't normal, by the way. This is actually what we would call like an attack. So I had to settle it in prayer. And after that, one of the top people I've had since the earlier part of the year, she's still a pivotal factor in my home that is allowing me to go out and do what I need to do. It may sound like a small thing, but like I said, for me being a wife and a mom, if my home is out of order, all this shalais, honestly, it's not going to work because that's my priority, right? So for me, it's really just the privilege to pursue what God has put in my hands to pursue. The opportunity and the privilege, the even the ability to put, because I remember I used to ask God, why did you send me into the big four if that wasn't something that I was going to continue? Because for me, young graduate, I enter and I'm like, of course, the next trajectory is to be partner. So I'm like, I would ask God, like, now I'm in the middle of this, I'm all confused. Even before setting up Charles Adam, I'm like, so what was the point of that? Like, what was the point of that? And, you know, God's ways are not our ways. Everything is not a straight line the way we think. And one of the things he told me, he said, well, just the fact that you're big for now, look the doors it has opened for what I need you to do. That if you weren't at the big four, you would not have the mouth, like you wouldn't have the same caliber. I don't know if you get what I mean. Like the same confidence, the same caliber. It's like how if you go to Harvard, anywhere you go, you before they talk, hi, my name is this, I went to Harvard. They open up, you know, that kind of stuff. It's exactly, it's a door opener. But in my mind, I'm looking at it like, okay, you know, if you set me on this path, then that's supposed to be an indicator that this is what I'm supposed to do for, because we like safety as humans. We like a sense of control. We need to know that it doesn't shift. But when you're walking with God, it doesn't roll like that. So he's the one that knows the different things that you need, right? So for me, it's just grateful, like, to now even be able to connect the dots, because you can have the opportunity, you can have the privilege, but in the middle of it, you still won't even be able to put two and two together. So I would say that's the thing I'm most grateful
What you see, Charles?
in the next 5 years. I don't know, that's always a hard question for me, you know. But 5 years from now, so let me just look at, if we jump 5 years from now, I definitely see us having expanded a little bit more outside of Nigeria. I cannot tell you the country because I don't know, but I know that Nigeria wouldn't be our only clientele, still probably within Africa. In that sense, we would have definitely covered ground in Nigeria for sure by that point, and be looking to serve more people outside of Nigeria. We definitely would have grown. I believe by then we should have HQ. A very nice HQ in here in Abuja. Abuja always have HQ. But have HQ, we definitely would have created a lot more jobs for sure. And I don't always like to think of things like revenue targets, because I'm pretty sure anything I think of God will super exceed it. So there's no point. No point. But definitely no. I see us at least a minimum staff strength of 3 people across board, and we would have definitely expanded to other service lines as well. So you remember at the beginning I talked about we're trying to do some more stuff around HR. We're trying to, add others, because the idea is you should be able to come to Charles Addo with your business, and it's a one-stop shop. So, okay, I can outsource my accounting to you guys. I can also outsource HR. I can also, so there's going to be a lot of partnerships, I'm sure, for that. I mean, next year, which is the closest one we're doing, we're in the works to run some workshops with like Zoho as like the actual, like an actual partnership. So that's going to definitely open up. And my own is, I'm thinking of the structure that needs to be in place, because if what I expect to come up with that actually does, it might tank us if we're not careful with too fast growth, So I think it's really that. Definitely another country, definitely a larger staff strength, and I definitely think that at that point too, our impact side would have grown. So something that's been on my heart is really making sure that accountants in our industry really have access to decent working experience in their first few interactions. Because what is available right now is, okay, I've graduated, so you go apply for an accounting job. But the truth is, most people are having to figure that thing out. So imagine you just finished school, because you say you're an accountant, they hire you, you may have even done your ICANN, but you don't have the experience, but the whole company is placing the financial responsibility or financial management responsibility on you. But you haven't actually had training. So a lot of accountants have the book smart, but to actually test it in theory and be not just, okay, I have a job, but to know that, okay, as I'm doing this job, I'm being trained so that I know if I'm making mistakes, it gets fixed, rather than me finding out 5-6 years that what I've been doing since is not reconciliation, it's just posting. I've had guys work for me 4-5 years that are telling me that this in my company is the first time they're doing bank reconciliations. I'm like, what have you been doing your whole career? Like, it's just posting. Now it's not their fault, because again, you need guidance. Like, if you're a junior person, there should be a senior person that oversees what you're doing, right? So that you know, and but that is lacking. And that's also because many companies too in Nigeria are still trying to figure out how to even last long, let alone grow into having that kind of structure. So our impact side in that sense, I definitely think would have, by then I think we should have at least I mentioned Fali, our future accounting leaders internship. By the grace of God, I think we should have, by that time, maybe we'll be taking intakes of 100 at a time. Yeah.
Awesome.
Yeah.
I should have started with this question. Charles Ador.
Yes.
The name. I was like, is this like a
I've had
friend?
people think,
Like,
someone once told me,
what's your husband's name?
no, my husband is a Charles. So you want to know where the name came from?
Yeah.
All right. So funny story. Remember I told you that I felt like I had outgrown What Next Coach as a name, and I wanted a separate brand to do separate stuff, because I felt like What Next Coach had become a bit too childish. So my thinking process was this: I'm gonna set up another company, but with this company, I don't want anybody to haggle my invoices with me. I'm giving you my honest to God thinking pattern. There's no special, call it Charles. I don't know. It was, I need a name that people will take seriously. I need a name that I'm confident to show up as. I'm like, yes, my name is this, and I'm from Charles Adder and Company. Like I wanted to present like that. I didn't want people to haggle my invoices and all of that. And I also wanted a name that would challenge me as well to remember the value that we're trying to put out. So I was like, okay, what name can I go with? So my dad and my brother are actually Charles. So there are Charles in my house. So I was like, okay, Charles is a name. And also because whether I like it or not, and not to play the gender card, but to a large degree it's still a man's world. And just knowing that if I step into a place with Charles, there are some people who takes them a while to realize I am the Charles. but at least, yeah, it takes them a while. They're like, okay, so she's like just maybe the team lead, or maybe that kind of stuff. I'm like, I don't mind. Just so far you shall allow, just hear what I have to say. So I started with that, like, okay, that's my dad's name, and my brother, they're both Charles. So cool. Then Arda, I was looking for a name that would represent like just some kind of like zeal and enthusiasm and passion. So I went on Pinterest and I was just looking for anything that would resonate. I'm not joking. That's how I found it. So I was looking for different words. It was on Pinterest, I'll never forget. And I saw the word Arda. I'm like, oh, I've never heard this one. I looked at it and I was just like, along the lines of like zeal and passion. So Charles. And then I checked. I was like, just to check that this isn't actually anybody's name. At that point, it wasn't. But on LinkedIn, there's one Charles Arda. Like, it's a person. But that's the only one. So it's not like a common name. So I'm like, that's cool. And that's how it is. And I said, okay, can I name it as Charles? I didn't want to go Charles Addo accountant or accounting, because again, at least I knew at that point I wasn't trying to set up an accounting firm. I was more leaning towards it would be a professional services firm. We'll just see all the things that we can increasingly add to it. And then I think by the time I looked at some other firms like McKinsey, and I think McKinsey was & Company. So I was like, oh, I like the & Company. So I just added that. No, that's how we got the name. Literally. And one day I remember someone said to me, she realized I was the owner of Charles Aldo. And she goes, oh, wait. That she thought it was a foreign company that came to Nigeria and that I was just the country director. I'm like, that's good. That's exactly what I want you to think. That's fine. Oh, fantastic, wonderful, great. So that's how I came up with the name. Honestly, there was no special anything around it. I just knew that I wanted a name that even I. So for me, I do a lot of things from the inside out. If something feels doesn't is if something is incongruent within, I can't set. So I would is things like that that would hinder me from being a good salesperson. I can't sell something I don't believe in. I can't sell something that I feel separated from. So I wanted a name that anywhere I go, myself, I'm carrying the name on my shoulder. Like, yes, my name is Albert from Charles Carter and Company. And some of my senior accounting colleagues, I said, why do you call him? Who is Charles? Your name is Stephanie. I said, well, you want me to call me Stephanie and Sons? So yeah, so that was really how Charles Carter and Company came about. No special, just here, there, and everywhere. I put it together, and just like when God finished creating the world, He said, "This is good."
It's owned by you and
It was good. So yeah, so that's it. Hi, my name is Stephanie. I am the righteousness of Christ. That's who I am.